So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the PMIWIC chapter meeting for October 2020. It's great to have all of you out joining us virtually. We're pretty excited about tonight's event, and we're so thankful that all of you have decided to continue to, press forward through COVID and continue to support all the great events that we're having as PMI, the Western Idaho chapter. So we'll give you a monthly update on what's happening and what events we have coming up that you can be a part of. And then we'll get into our topic and our discussion for tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to Craig to walk us through membership.
Yeah, hey, Tanisha, thanks, and thanks everybody. So I'm kind of playing catch up a little bit with the membership roles and the things that happened over the summer. So I wasn't sure exactly when the last time we kind of celebrated the membership. So I went back to May, actually, so June, July, August. So I got the summer months and here into October. So these numbers look pretty big, you'll see, but I wanted to just not miss anybody. So our current membership is at 556, which is really strong. If you've been watching this, that's down a little bit from our highs in the last fall and over the spring. A lot of that I believe really is due to COVID. People not renewing their membership at the moment. I've heard from a number of people who were like, well, we're not meeting, and they're just not seeing. They really like the in-person thing. So hopefully that trend will change direction here pretty soon, but 556 is still strong, and we still are getting new members. So we've had 21 since May, and that's great. I believe that Mackenzie and Lauren are both expected to be on the call today. So if you guys are here, welcome, and appreciate your interest in the chapter, and we hope that works out well. So the next slide is the anniversary. So we had a whole bunch of one-year anniversaries. There's 40 of them. So Emily, it looks like you may be the only one on the registered. Other people may be here. So welcome. Thanks for sticking out a year. It's been a weird year, but hopefully you'll find this is a good and valuable experience being part of the chapter. So these are our one-year anniversaries, and thanks for everybody sticking in for that. So the next slide is going to be the 5 and 10 years. So a bunch of 5 and 10 years. We love to see the longevity here. And Brett, if you're on the phone, thanks for being here, and congratulations on 5 years with the chapter. So here are our 5 and 10 year anniversaries. And we actually have even one more slide, which is a little bit unusual, but we have 15 and 20 year anniversaries that are kind of being celebrated this month. Janelle, our president, 15 years, and there's a couple of 20 years, even Mark and Anthony. So if you guys are around, thanks for being so consistent and sticking with the chapter for so long, and we appreciate you being here. And I think that's my last slide, Tanisha.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Craig. And again, thanks to all of you who are members. Can't echo what Craig said enough. Thanks for hanging in there through, COVID, and hopefully what we have in store for you this year will make up for all the delays and things that we've had as we've been adjusting to dealing with not being able to meet in person. So next slide, I will switch over to Karen, who will talk about our social media.
Great. Thanks, Tanisha. Hi, everyone. So I think you guys have seen this slide before, perhaps in the past, but we do have a Facebook group, a new Facebook group out there. It's been out there all summer, actually. So if you're on Facebook, go and look for us, PMI Western Idaho chapter, and request to join. We have a lot of good information out there. We're sharing information not only from our local chapter, but from PMI as well. So a lot of good information out there. And yeah, if I would love it if you would all join, request to join. And if you know others who might benefit from participating in that group, go ahead and invite them as well or share the link out with them. All right, that's all I had.
Thanks, Karen. Great, we'll turn it over to our VP of Communications, Cheryl.
Hi, everybody. Okay, so Comtech, we have communications and technology on our team, and we definitely could use some help with the communication side. I'm looking for someone to assist with content, curating content, helping me with newsletters and pushing information out to our social media, as well as our LinkedIn accounts. So if you're interested and you've got a little bandwidth, send me an email and we'll chat. My email's on the slide. It looks like it's a little bit cut off, but it's vp_communications@pmiwic.org. So love to hear from you. So join our team. We're a lot of fun. Woohoo! Just kidding. No, we really are. Actually, we're a lot of fun.
Thanks, Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we'll switch to Vicki if she's on to talk us through some of the volunteering events that are coming up.
So I am looking at the list. I don't see Vicki on just yet.
Okay, well then I'll cover them. So we have a couple, as you can see on the screen. We have a volunteering event at the Idaho Food Bank warehouse on Friday, November the 6th. The information is out on our website. If you would like to sign up to volunteer, we would love to have you be a part of that. And then grab a rake and help us rake up Boise. We're volunteering in that event as well on Saturday, November the 14th. So again, both of those events are available out on our website for you to sign up. Come out and help us to make an impact in our community. We'd appreciate your support in that. And if we have Dave on, he can talk about the Lunch and Learn event.
And I do not see Dave on as yet.
All right, I'll just keep trucking through it then.
Okay.
Join us for our November Lunch and Learn, our project management roundtable. So that should be awesome. November the 14th, so save the date. Looks like they have up to 6 breakout sessions planned for that Lunch and Learn. So make sure that you're, again, watching on our website or join our social media, our Facebook page, and get real-time updates on all of those things. Okay, Colleen.
Yes, hello everybody. And I am pleased to announce that we are locked and loaded, so to speak, for our 2021 Professional Development Day. The date is Friday, March 5th, and we are going to do this virtually. This will be the chapter's very first virtual Professional Development Day, and it's going to be a great event. We are so lucky because we had such great speakers last year, and they've all opted to come back. Almost all have opted to come back, and including our very special keynote speaker, Brian Fretwell. As many of you may know, Brian has a TED Talk out there, TEDx Talk. He is a very well-known speaker on the circuit, motivational speaker, and he is even updated his content and his material to be even more relevant in the COVID-19 era. And how do we stay together and recover from COVID-19 together? This is going to be as I said, a virtual event. It's going to be on a Friday afternoon. It'll start at noon and go till 5. It will have 4 PDUs worth of content sessions, including the keynote speaker and as well 3 opportunities for breakout sessions. And then if you're really adventurous, you can even earn a 5th PDU by writing a white paper and submitting a white paper by the deadline February 15th. So we have an opportunity for up to 5 PDUs, and this will be a much reduced price event from the last one because we won't be doing anything in the way of lunch or food or any of that, or we don't have any venue costs to cover. We're able to, the only major costs we have to cover is our keynote speaker, and so it brings the ticket price way down to $60 for non-members and $40 for members. So it's a really great value, and up to 5 PDUs. So mark your calendars, save the date. We're going to have a lot more information coming out about the PDD in the coming months.
Thanks, Colleen.
You bet.
Okay, and now it's time for everyone's favorite event. We're talking about our 2020 annual career panel. So excited about this event. Just to kind of give you some background, we will focus on the impacts of the pandemic, what impacts the pandemic has had on hiring, reducing, and then retooling the workforce, as well as what 2021 holds in terms of hiring trends, industry needs, and what we can do and how PMI Western Idaho chapter can help to support our members as things continue to shift and things continue to change. I do want to note that this presentation provides you with 1.5 PDUs that they could also align with the strategic, leadership, and technical elements of the PMI Talent Triangle. Cheryl, if you'd like to give some more information on how they file for those PDUs.
Yeah, Tanisha. So actually, there is a document that's in their materials section on their control panel. They can open it up right now if they'd like. It's called PDU Reporting Instructions. They can download that. That'll also be included in the materials available after the meeting. And it just gives them instructions on where they go on the website and how they actually report their PDUs. It's pretty straightforward. We do self-reporting. So you take a look at what you need for your PMI Talent Triangle. As you mentioned, this particular presentation actually aligns with all 3 elements: strategic, leadership, and technical. So you can choose to do all 1.5 in strategic or leadership or technical, or break them up as you need to.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Uh-huh.
All right, and so tonight for our panelists, we have representatives from Experience, from St. Luke's, from Compass, and from Tech Systems. So we're really excited to have this discussion. I do also want to thank all of the members who signed up. You put in there some things and some topics that you wanted to cover or were hoping to cover during this session. I did try to take all of those things into account and built them into the questions that we will be covering. We're hopeful that we will have time for Q&A at the end, but I hope that I've adequately covered all the topics that you've requested. With that said, let me start with some introductions. We'll start with one of our panelists for tonight, Vance Kirkland. He's the Area Director of Program Management for St. Luke's Health System. Vance is an Area Director of Program Management for the St. Luke's Health System and is a seasoned leader with over 3 decades of program, project, and portfolio management experience. In addition, he has significant experience in continuous improvement, business management, strategic planning, and application of technology to solve business problems. He has taught computer information systems and business applications at the post-secondary level. Welcome, Vance. Next, I'll introduce Michelle Marshall. She is the sales lead for the Boise market of Experience. Michelle started as a business analyst in retail banking, where she had a desire to pursue data center and network operations transformation opportunities, and that paved the way for roles in IT leadership and project management. These experiences then led to delivery and sales roles, providing contract staffing, direct hire, outsourcing, and project services for Fortune 500 companies, public sector, and startups. Formerly the experienced Bay Area market leader, Michelle transferred in 2018 to help Boise companies achieve their workforce objectives. We're glad that you transferred to Boise. Welcome, Michelle. Next, I'd like to introduce Megan Davis. She is the recruiting lead for the Boise office of Tech Systems. Megan, Tech Systems is the nation's leading technology staffing and service company. Currently, they have more than 70,000 technical professionals supporting critical IT engagements at more than 5,500 client sites, including 82% of the Fortune 500 companies. The Boise Tech Systems office has supported the Idaho, Montana, Eastern Washington, and Alaska IT markets for over 20 years. As the recruiting lead, Megan drives the strategy behind their recruiting efforts and leads new recruiter training and development. When she's not working, Megan enjoys rock hounding, traveling, and being a mom to her two pups, Bricks and Winston. Welcome, Megan. And our last panelist tonight is Carl Miller. He is the principal planner for Compass. Carl is the principal planner for demographics and performance-based planning. Prior to Compass, he worked as a planner for Canyon County and for the city of Boise. He holds a bachelor's degree in planning and resource management from Brigham Young University and a master of public education at public administration, from Boise State. Welcome, Carl. We are so excited to have all of our panelists here tonight. With that said, I am going to just pause my screen sharing so that I can see all of them. And we are going to get started with our questions. So let's just kind of start with talking about the impacts of COVID. Can you share, and Vance, I'll just go in the order that I see you guys. So Vance, I'll start the questioning with you, and then we'll just go around round robin and just open discussion after that. So Vance, can you share what effects COVID-19 has had on the way people work, even workforce reduction, workforce productivity, if productivity is increased or decreased, like the quality, the overall quality of work? What impacts have you seen at St. Luke's?
Well, obviously we've been significantly impacted all around. It's been an interesting 7 or 8 months. I think that the initial impact was that about 2 months in, we chose to pause all non-critical, non-compliant, non-safety projects. So that was obviously a pretty big shift. All of my folks, I head up an area team that is made up of both project managers and continuous improvement coaches or process improvement coaches. We shifted though most of our efforts after we had kind of scaled down, reprioritized the ones that were related to patient safety, patient quality, compliance, and that we were able to reprioritize all of the work efforts, shift those efforts, shift our resources over onto those efforts. So as an organization, St. Luke's has not reduced labor or resources at all in any of the departments. One of the immediate impacts, though, was that we did shift quite a few of the project management and other resources to telecommuting for most of their work. It's been interesting because my PMs to a large extent are tele, and my continuous improvement coaches, because they're a little bit more hands-on, have remained kind of in-house. So it's been kind of a challenge for them to readjust the PMs, and we'll talk more about that later, but we have not reduced our labor force at all. Now we're beginning to shift back and restart. We're doing a reprioritization practice and going through and restarting the projects up that were paused.
Wow. Megan, can you tell us from your experience what you've seen?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different things to it. And I think the biggest change is just the way people work. That's really what stood out to me, obviously, along with what Van said. I think it's really depending on the industry and kind of where people were at with processes to allow the capability to work remotely. I think a lot of companies were moving towards, like, we're in this digital transformation era, right? And a lot of companies were moving towards that, and they had these goals and their budgets set for years to come. And then overnight it became a reality that we needed these tools to work remotely. So what are we going to do? And I mean, tons of companies just did not have the infrastructure to support that. So I think it was a lot of different change at first. I think a lot of companies are learning to adapt, but I think the biggest piece in terms, I think it relates to productivity, quality of work, everything you mentioned in that question is just that face-to-face interaction that I know a lot of project managers and people listening to this are used to, just as well as I am as a recruiter, having that face-to-face interaction with my colleagues. I think that's the biggest adjustment and has affected a lot of different aspects of day-to-day work. So.
Thanks. Carl, what have you seen out at Compass?
Thanks, Tanisha. Thanks for having me on. I think I'm representing the public sector here. Compass is a council of governments that really works on long-range transportation planning and getting federal dollars to do roads and bridges and buses and those kind of things. And as a government agency, especially in Idaho, these are usually times during recessions or times of turmoil or big catastrophes going on. Usually Idaho governments will kind of hunker down, cut budgets, not really do a whole lot of hiring. We've seen that to an extent. We've actually hired somebody. We have a staff of 20, and to hire one person during this is fairly remarkable. But I think that more goes to show that Western Idaho and Treasure Valley specifically has been in such a growth period for so long that we're always playing catch up, and more productivity is needed. This obviously has been a different experience. Governments are usually supposed to be in the office, available for the public, and for a government to send people home. Obviously there was a lot of apprehension about, are people going to work, or are they going to, just watch Netflix all day? And so far it's been a good experience for, I'd say, most people. Our boss was, I think, very nervous that we would still show up at staff meetings and still turn in things that we needed to get done. And so far, I think productivity has been about where it has been. But I think there's also some, I wouldn't say, that's saying as a whole, there's definitely different experiences depending on, the personality, your work life experience, your home. I have 3 kids that go to school, and so they're doing a lot of that from home. And so they're here and they're eating up the internet speed, and they're busting in my door and asking for snacks in the middle of the day. And so, I think that's a different experience than, my coworkers that, live by themselves, who really are anxious to get back into the office because they miss that human interaction. I get too much human interaction. And so I could go back to the office for other reasons to kind of focus my, what I need to get done. But obviously, I think we're learning how to communicate in this new paradigm, and I think that'll be kind of the key is how do we be flexible with each other and communicate and make sure that we're holding each other accountable and helping each other out along the way too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Michelle?
Now I'm unmuted. Honored to be part of the panel. Thank you for having me. The things that I could add, I would say that initially it was just not just pause, but put on, skid the brakes, reevaluate, etc. As I look at the client base in my role, I see a snapshot across Boise, Portland, and Seattle. My boss, Drew Westover, runs that whole space. It was much like what Van said, what do we really need to get across the finish line, right? So I'm going to bring it to what I see now. The last 4 to 6 weeks, there's been an uptick in independent of fiscal year. What do we have to get done that's calendar year bound, regulatory bound, and we have to get back to business independent of the things that are happening. I'm pleased to say that the impact for our portfolio of consultants was limited. Very little furlough, very little end of assignment. There was some slow summer, and the last 4 to 6 weeks have been certainly an uptick compared to the last 4 to 6 months. I hesitate to say that's a pattern or a trend. I think it's really a pent-up demand. Most of the client base has budget. That's a great thing, with a lot of our companies being down in revenue, with some exceptions. They're being incredibly cautious about spend. And what they've been talking about throughput is that there was an initial spike and increase of activity as people went remote. I think it was people wanting to be relevant, know that they had validation and value, and quite frankly, probably were putting in not just their usual long hours, but even longer hours. Then there was a decrease to the things that Carl talked about. How am I going to adapt with no summer school, things that we're going to do over the summer, limited bandwidth, all this streaming. So there was not a halt, but it went from this fever pitch, great throughput, to a slight decrease. And you could feel the disconnect, the kind of fractured, oh yeah, that's right, we got to get this done type of thing. And now I would say, as I listen to clients, it's really about a plateauing. People are trying to find their groove. And bundling another question about the adaptations of going forward, so we can start for the next question. It's really a variety of different work your way, if you will. There are rotation plans that companies are employing, whether it's every other week, every third week, ABC, red, blue, green team, etc., and all of the social distancing you can. There is phased return to office. Some companies very optimistic that you know what, it's mind over matter, and we'll just intentionalize that we can all come back, and we're going to do that in phase through the end of January. You have some folks remote until further notice, and that's usually due to not workload and project management, but more about risk mitigation. Can you get the place clean enough? How do you certify that cleaning, and etc. And the last one that impacts commercial real estate to be a new next, what's that going to look like? Office closures, take and reinvest that investment. So those are just some of the high level things that I've seen in terms of impact.
Yeah, and speaking of impact, that's a good segue, because I would like to open up our first poll question out to the audience tonight. Cheryl, if you can share our first poll. Thank you. So we'll give you a moment to participate in the poll. Just wanting to understand how you as project managers have been leading during COVID, if it's posed any isolation challenges, and how have you had to adapt?
So Tanisha, this is Cheryl. We're just under, oh, they're 45%, so about halfway there.
Okay, we'll give just another couple minutes, and then we'll check our poll results. Okay, Cheryl, how are we doing?
We're at about 71% voted. Maybe let's wait till we get to about 80.
Okay, sounds good.
A little bit longer.
All right.
Okay, we seem to have, I was going to say we plateaued around 74%. We're up to 76. I'm not seeing any more movement though, so I think we can probably close the poll at this point.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So those are our results. Let me just make sure that you can see them on your screens. So it looks like 66%, a large percent, have stepped up one-on-one meetings with the team members. I know that that's been pretty true, at least in my role as a PM as well, followed closely by 45%, having more chats, coffee talks, and additional opportunities for some informal engagement. Some have also gotten creative on how to onboard. Definitely some challenging times there. And then it looks like a small percentage have moved budget to increase licensing for some other online software. So good turnout. Thanks for participating in that. So continuing our discussion, Carl, Vance, Megan, Michelle, the adaptations that you've seen so far in the workplace due to COVID, how do you see those adaptations post-COVID? Whenever post-COVID is, right? Or as we're continuing in this kind of new paradigm, how do you think, or what have you seen, or your organizations are kind of planning and preparing for as we go forward?
I think that I don't know that there's really any decision making at this point in terms of, you know, do we continue to have some people working from home or that type of thing. I do believe that one of the major impacts, though, going forward will be that people will be a lot more comfortable with non-face-to-face meetings. As a culture, St. Luke's has just always been a very look, let's get everybody in the room where we're face to face. Let's talk through these things. Let's make a decision. Let's move on. And you know, the adaptations that we've made with the social distancing, with the people working from home, you know, that we've really tried to minimize travel, for instance, from our other sites in Magic Valley and McCall and Wood River and places. And so people are getting much more comfortable with running the meetings and with participating in the meetings remotely. One of the things I've noticed is that it's had the effect of tightening up agendas and tightening up decision making and action item production in these meetings, rather than everybody just sitting there, you know, kind of gabbing and side conversations and everything else. It really has had a secondary benefit of tightening those meetings up and making them more productive. Going forward, I don't know. There's possibilities, I suppose, that things like call centers or those kinds of things, that a lot of that has moved home, that they may be able to you know, minimize their physical expansion and their location requirements by pushing at least some of that off. So we'll see what happens if it ends.
Right, if it ends, for sure. Carl, what have you seen, and what is your company doing or seeing even post-COVID?
Yeah, I think I agree with Vance that there's not a whole lot of decisions being made that will impact the long term, other than about a year and a half ago, I had this dream that my workplace went to an open floor setting. And it was this nightmare. I woke up in a cold sweat. I said, oh no, I don't want this. I got to work. I went straight to the HR director's office and I said, you know, I don't know if this was premonition, but if just in case you go to an open floor plan, I'm updating my resume, I'm getting a new job. And she said, well, we haven't even talked about that. We're not doing that. Go back to work. And so I think that's the only long-term decision that's basically been nixed, is we're never going to have an open floor plan again. In fact, I sat with a group of realtors in a meeting today, and they talked about more space rather than, you know, one employee per 600 square feet in an office setting. Maybe you're doubling that, and you're really going to need more space. And it's really going to make those urban areas difficult to pay for that much office space. You know, CenturyLink moving out of downtown Boise. You know, and can some of those employees work from home? Can some not? I think, you I agree that also our meetings are a little bit more focused. There's an agenda, and we're going through the list, and I think that's good. But I also think that can be detrimental too if we don't have those just over the wall coffee room conversations. It's difficult to come to somebody and say, I need this decision made, if you don't have that that level of trust with somebody, and that you talked about the sports over the weekend with them. It can be a little bit disruptive, and so I think we're missing out on some of those epiphanies that happen as you chat with somebody across the wall. So efficiency and I think productivity is going up, but are we losing some of those things on the other side of how are we building a culture and communicating, and those little wins along the way that maybe you can't check off a list, but they're certainly helpful.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I do foresee, just like you're saying, Carl, that could be a problem, because you build rapport and you build relationship kind of in those face-to-face environments, and passing people in the hallway, and getting coffee and those things. And so now that those things have changed, how do we create, right, that virtual coffee space and that virtual environment for coworkers and team members to get together and to know each other, and to have some type of a relationship that's not just around business, but being able to kind of build a personal rapport with people. And I think that will be something that businesses will definitely, and PMs, right, we will have to figure out, how do we incorporate those types of things, right? Not just all work and getting projects done and bringing teams together to get project work done, but actually bringing teams together. What would our celebrations of success look like now, as opposed to what they did before, right? What does it look like when we get the team together to celebrate those things? And so I do think that there will be quite a bit more creativity as we go forward and continue to emerge in this space. Michelle, Megan, or Vance?
I think it's interesting to note that the second highest poll response was now having more chat, copy talk, and opportunities for that. I think people are trying to work around what you're talking about.
Yeah, definitely.
They are. It's people, process, and tools. So if I look at our own organization, I'm gonna start with the easy one, the tools. What's the future and the impact? And it's really what I've seen as a trend, and how are we going to adopt it to be a practice, is documentation. So many times you spend a lot of time talking through, yes, the benefit is rapport building. How effective is that? So through the use of tools like OneNote, it's like, here are all my thoughts, right? You're exchanging that back and forth. It's creating a completely different way to do it. It's creating commitment. And it's also creating innovation. And what I think we've found through the implementation of tools, I'll talk about it. It sounds big brother, but it's really not, is that we have started to get our introverts more comfortable, thus creating more diversity in the decision making. Because in the person to person, your extroverts dominate the table. It just is, right? But in this new next, there's a normalization when you have to convey your thoughts on paper. So the use of tools is what our company is looking at Manpower Group for some implementation. And the big brother piece is some Microsoft Analytics. It only goes to you, or so they say. So I'm going to just take a leap of faith that it's only coming to me. How much percentage of your time you're spending in minute meetings, collaboration internally via email, collaboration externally, how you're scheduling meetings, notes, etc. I found it very helpful, and it really helped our organization with that spike of work decrease, getting to a steadier flow of like work integration. So that's tools. On process, I think what we'll see across many companies, including my own, is we're going to see meeting etiquette, right? 20 minutes or 50 minutes. When you look at Silicon Valley, Google implemented this years ago. mostly because it was a campus driven thing. You had a long way to go, and Apple did it. What our president of North America identified is, my goodness, we're not, meetings are bleeding into meetings, we need some downtime. And so we've adopted that as a process. That's a new practice that I think is going to be great. And then on the people part, I really think communication and messaging, I see it and feel it much more aligned, not just top down or the cadences or the newsletters, but bottom up. We're asking new to career individuals who right out of college, right out of high school, right out of just a new job. We're asking frontline employees. It's not just, it's made a shift to much more bi-directional. And so I'm sure where we don't have a process yet to do that formal, like the old-fashioned suggestion box, right? But what we're doing is we are opening up through surveys and polls like the one we just took, anonymous things that are going out. So a real focus on people, process, and tools to adapt for things that won't be disposable. Most of these practices will be great, even if we return, when, I don't have a crystal ball, but should we, these are still great practices. Documentation, enlisting the ideas of the introverts, and the usage of more tools, meeting timeframes, meeting etiquette.
For sure, for sure. Megan, anything to chime in?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add to everything. I think everybody else has said is great. I think one thing that I will add, I think that kind of just sums it up for me and how I kind of look at it. I think in the beginning, for a lot of customers and a lot of consultants or people I were working with, it was more of a crisis response to adapt a lot of this stuff. And now we're looking at a fundamental change. So I think that adaptation is taking place not only in your practices and stuff, but budgets, business decisions. I think now that we're kind of going towards this fundamental change, maybe that, I don't want to call it a trend either, Michelle, but maybe that's what has kind of spiked a little bit in the last 4 to 6 weeks. It's like, oh no, numbers are still rising. We got to get these people in here and hire these people to make these fundamental changes. It's no longer just a crisis response. So I think it's pretty cool in a lot of ways seeing people that were really against some of these adaptations with technology, kind of learning to do that. I know I've done some of that myself. And the other thing is just being customer centric is another thing. So companies looking at products of their people they're serving a lot more and how is it affecting them. I think that's always been something that people focus on, but I've noticed not only are the companies we work with or how I kind of do my day-to-day changed in that sense, but I think it affects all of us definitely a lot more than maybe it did, or we think about it a lot more. So
yeah, agreed. And we've talked a lot about kind of how companies have adapted to COVID restrictions, how that impacts our the employees. Let's just do one more topic with COVID, right? How have the guidelines regarding social distancing and the limitations on large group meetings affected your project management functions for your organization? So we've talked about telework. Is that catching on? Do the PMs overall, are you finding that they're comfortable, or is there still some hesitation or the desire to actually, be face to face and be in person? Or is there an anxiety, or what are you seeing there, Vance?
I would say that it's highly dependent on the individual. Some PMs are more needy about that, face-to-face interaction, get the people in the room, and work through, go meet face-to-face with people and work with them. Others are totally satisfied and comfortable with working remotely. And I think some of it has to do with personality. Others have to do with the fact I have a pretty senior project management staff. I've got 2 or 3 that have 30 years of project management experience. They've worked for large global corporations. And, so those of us who, Micron, for instance, or worked at HP, are pretty used to having meetings with people in Puerto Rico or Taiwan or Singapore. So years and years, 20 years ago, we were doing remote meetings and managing projects that way. So I think that, it has that both aspects to it. One is kind of the personal side of it. Some people just like to work, like to engage, like to be there, and others are totally comfortable with either way. So I think, obviously from St. Luke's perspective, as far as social distancing, we obviously jumped into that even before it became kind of a mandate publicly. We immediately pretty much stopped large group meetings and made them at least hybrid, if not totally tele. So that was a fairly big impact, and it was fairly immediate. That was in March, so it was pretty quick.
Yeah. Carl, what have you seen, or is it pretty much about the same as what Vance is sharing in your workspace?
Yeah, I would echo a lot of what he said. A lot of it's personality or how long you've been at the job and whether you're able to kind of just take on your project and work on that, or some of our newer staff really need to be there and be coached along the way. I've been thinking about this as far as, is this a trend that's going to continue, the working from home and teleworking? Is it going to continue into the future? And I think back on 10 years ago, during the Great Recession, I think there was a lot of newspaper articles, a lot of talk at the time about how will this change the way that as a society we live. And at the time people thought, well, people won't buy things that they can't afford, and people will really, be more conservative with their budgets and not buy anything. And then 2 years later, we were buying bigger houses and buying, more expensive cars than ever before. And that was a blip in the radar. So I think the question is this different? Is this a different thing than that? And I think it is, in that we were already trending towards telework, whether it was full time for a lot of people or just a couple days a week. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to my boss and said, can I work from home? I got, I think my kids were doing something, and can I work from home a couple days? And 3 or 4 years ago, especially in the government sector, it was like, a lot of distrust. I got, well, what are you going to do? And they tell me exactly how you're going to spend your time. And at the end of the meeting, my supervisor said, well, I really don't know if you're going to work when you're at home. And I said, well, you really don't know if I'm working while I'm here in the office either, which was maybe not the best response. But the fact of the matter is, we're now 2 years in, and those trends have a reason to keep going. And if we can figure out a lot of these onboarding and communication and flexibility, if I send you an email, does that mean I'm going to get one right back? Is it going to be an hour later that day, later this week? And figure out kind of the communication styles. Some things come across in an email different than they do in a face-to-face meeting. But I think this is a trend that will continue, and we're going to see a lot of changes in the way society works because of this.
Absolutely. All right, let's shift gears, right? Let's talk about the employment outlook. So a question, I'll direct these first two to Megan and Michelle. How has COVID-19 affected recruitment, hiring, onboarding? What have you seen there? And I know you shared a little bit that there weren't serious impacts for some of your for some of your employees and people that you were placing, but overall, what have you seen? We'll start with Michelle first.
It's interesting. It seemed somewhat flawless with the exception of network connection. So it's dropping that computer. Oh my goodness, we're all accustomed to that. Getting them onboarded frequently, whether it's a Boise-based business that's local or global. HR is somewhere else, or in some cases might be outsourced, right, through one of the PEOs, the professional employee organizations. The single greatest challenge, network connectivity. So do they have to go on campus? Well, if it's a closed campus, where are they going to get just get the downloads from a security perspective. So I would say that is because the biggest concern during most of this time was cybersecurity attacks, right? Remember, are we going to use Zoom? Are we going to use Teams? What are we going to do? But that number one, all the logistics around getting them their package, we've all done that online the last time we applied. We've generally met with someone over the phone. It was kind of cool to meet them face to face via some kind of streaming. That was it. Once they got the equipment, now what? Network connectivity, safety, security, those things somewhat addressed. So they'll be pushing images over, wherever you're going to go to make that happen based on the company. I saw that as the biggest connection. And then on the human side, individuals who were onboarded and never met anyone, whether they've been on board 3 weeks, 3 months, or 6 months, they're actually still talking about that, right? It's like, I got onboarded, like a badge of courage or a badge of honor. And that sense, and it's something that, until we talked about it here tonight, I think I took for granted that I had a working relationship, cadence, trust, etc., with people who all work together. What about these new individuals? So as I listen to a lot of my clients, that's been so the network imaging security aspect, how do you address that? And then the connection for the people that were onboarded and haven't met anybody, right? They don't even understand a lot of these. We put a lot of value in corporate culture, right? They don't even know what that is. They haven't tasted it.
Megan?
Yeah, those are some really good points. I think those are some of the changes I've seen, super impact people in a big way. And just little things, walking people into their first day is something I used to like to do, things like that, and can't quite do that anymore. So it's interesting. But another big thing for me, kind of turning directions into the recruitment kind of side of things and how that's changed. I think so Tech Systems was doing a study last year in 2019. It started actually in October, where they were just looking at digital transformation in general and kind of the effects of that. And then when this COVID stuff happened, they did the research again, so pre and post COVID. And before COVID, there was only 44% they surveyed 300 some companies across all business units as well, not just IT. 44% of those leaders had the capability for their workforce, over 3/4 of their workforce, to work remotely. Now it's up to almost 90%. And so with that, I feel like, obviously that's a small sample, but with that comes the ability to hire talent remotely. And so people have these needs, they're getting super more specific, a lot more specific, and stuff that maybe we haven't seen as much in the Boise market or the Southwest Idaho market. They're saying, I want this experience with this certain technology or this certain system that they weren't able to find here, and now that's opening it up remotely. So there's a lot more competition in that sense. In recruitment efforts that I do when I'm looking at candidates, they're interviewing at a lot of other places than maybe compared to before. But now also hiring managers are starting to see, oh, well, if I open this up to remote, 100% remote work, even if there is an after COVID, I can really get those specific pieces of talent that I might be looking for that maybe I couldn't find here before. So that's another major change. Goes on and on. There's a lot of different things, but that's one of the biggest things I've seen definitely affect a lot.
Wow. Yeah, that is pretty interesting. I hadn't even considered that was, a potential change, that employers are using this opportunity, right, to kind of make sure that they're really getting what they want and able to kind of look at things differently. So around that same question, then, what is the current employment outlook within like the PM world, kind of in the next 6 months? What are you seeing? What's trending, kind of? And I'll start with either Megan or Michelle, right? They're kind of our experts in this for tonight.
I don't know about that. Megan probably. I'll just give you my anecdotes here. I'm going to start with data on what it looks like Boise compared to Portland compared to Seattle, in that it was very interesting to pull this together. It's real time, just looking at the last 6 months, those metro areas. So in Boise, the median experience of PMs is 20 years. So that's telling us something. In Portland, it's 15, and in Seattle, it's 10. So it's a very, just data, right? You know, salaries, you know, they start as low as 65K in Boise and go as high as 125. And we're seeing some uptick also here in Boise in the median spot, not quite as rich at the high end. And the number of open roles was eye-opening. And this is just PMs and IT, not including construction, which that is going off the hook. You're at construction, engineering, just business and IT. You know, Boise current demand, you know, for the moment, 114 roles, because we narrowed it down to project management within IT or business, not project coordinators, et cetera, or portfolio program. 800 plus in Portland, 2,000 in Seattle. So Megan was onto something about, you know, Boise clients are looking at this opportunity to say borderless talent. I can find, and I hesitate to use the word top grade, but I can get pickier, as she said, get nichier, bring in some talent that may not have been here locally. Well, the converse is happening as well. Because of the opportunity to work remote, you have Amazon, Google, Starbucks, Facebook poaching great Boise talent. So, you know, with right now, those metro compensations, which what I think the outlook will be on compensation will be perhaps the leveling depending on how long Boise, which we've had, you know, a need to say, should we come up a little bit, right? I think everyone here would say, sure, right? You know, especially as we continue to be one of the top 10 tech centers in the United States. It's kind of, you know, with Austin and Silicon Valley and Silicon Beach and Boston, it's remarkable. So that's it. It's how are we going to hold on to our talent? Is one. How are we going to get talent? I think we'll be rethinking what our teams look like. Just some
Definitely.
data.
Yeah. No, that's really useful. And actually it's surprising. It's surprising and not surprising, right? Because we definitely see the influx of, you know, lots of people moving into Idaho and into Boise. And so definitely was wondering also how the population growth was impacting us as well. Megan, anything to add there?
No, I don't think, I mean, those statistics are fantastic, and it's really good to look at, you know, the different markets and stuff and surrounding. So I appreciate you bringing that, Michelle, because I was looking a little into it, but focused a little bit more broadly, kind of just on, I guess, the biggest thing with the employment outlook, as Michelle and I have both said in this conversation, is we're hesitant to call it a trend, because the only thing that you can really tell with the outlook now is nothing is certain. The only thing is certain is change, is kind of how I'm seeing it. I think the trend is just, it's going to be, there's more competition. And I think, Michelle, you made a really good point with people coming into the market. I think that does a lot of opportunity. You know, people are getting more competitive with salaries and stuff too. And I think businesses are realizing that they're, you know, maybe needing to be a little bit more competitive in certain places, but not too much more to add on the employment outlook piece, just because it is so ever changing every day. So we'll see what's to come.
Absolutely. And then just out of curiosity, Vance and Carl, I'm wondering, are you seeing the same upticks in your industries as well?
I don't know that we're in a hiring mode yet. Because we're in the process of reprioritization, we're right in the middle of our capital planning for the next fiscal year. You know, because of that, I think we're kind of probably several to 6 months away from looking at resourcing and any expansion of resources from a PM or those perspectives. I thought it was really interesting. I'm really glad, Michelle and Megan, that you brought those things up, because I mean, that's something that our HR departments obviously really need to be aware of and thinking about, because they may not be thinking about, they're thinking about attracting PMs to come here, and maybe they're not thinking about the fact that we can utilize PMs that are remote, but B, so can Seattle utilize PMs that are in Boise remotely. And if there's that large of a salary discrepancy, that we're going to lose. And you know, and the thing I've always said is, from experience, is you don't lose the people you want to lose. You lose the ones you can ill afford to lose, right? Because they're the ones that have the mobility and the capability to do those things, to step out and just work remotely from Seattle and go to Seattle once a month, right? So, Carl?
Yeah, and Compass, we really do long range planning. So we're looking decades and decades down the road. And I'm glad for that, because I would have never guessed global pandemic in 2020. So I'm glad that we don't do short range forecasting. I think I'd be terrible at it. We have done a lot of analysis, and we have a forecast of about 1.1 million people for the Treasure Valley by 2050. So that's 1.7 new people every hour of the day, 24 hours a day for the next 30 years. So there's going to be lots of opportunities for project management and project management jobs in the future. I can't say when. I don't know if it'll be weeks, months, or years, but there's definitely an opportunity. Our economy's strong, and like you said, there's the opportunity for people to live here, lower cost of housing right now, fly out to Oakland, LA, Seattle once a month, and still that's a much more cost-effective way to live and be up at the mountains in an hour, you know, be on the river rather than being stuck in congestion and traffic that you would have in a major metropolitan area. So I think if anything else, this just ramps up the desire to be here and the need for project managers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's quite an alarming statistic, like that we're growing at that rate. You know, we're like a big city.
It feels like it. I mean, it feels like it every day. That's been one of the other benefits, the side benefits of this whole thing, is there's far less traffic going into downtown.
Yes, that is true.
Just looking for positives here.
That's absolutely a positive, for sure, for sure. I guess one thing I wanted to ask, so we've talked a lot about kind of the IT landscape, right? The IT project management landscape. What is it looking like for non-IT related opportunities for PMs? Any visibility there?
Well, most of the projects, I'll just step in real quick, because most of the projects that my folks work on are non-IT. They may be a large business project with an IT component, but in a lot of cases, if it's that large of an effort, we probably have an IT PM that's also attached, that runs that portion of the project. Most of the projects that we run are business facing, some even semi-clinical, not to the point where we're making decisions around how doctors or nurses are going to function, but we look more at you know, the logistics of rolling out a new process, or looking at actual physical processes and trying to improve those processes for the nurses or the docs. And you know, I think that I guess I would say that the impact there is that it requires a pretty well-rounded project manager. And you know, so if you're coming out of IT project management, for instance, it's not a different skill set when it comes to tools and technology and that type of thing, but it is a different tool set when it comes to interacting with with professionals like a group of neurosurgeons. It's a whole different skill set on the soft side.
Okay, and Carl, you're in the public sector. Are you seeing kind of the same thing as well?
Yeah, I think there's definitely that skill set is going to be transferable to a lot of different sectors, and we typically outsource all of our IT needs. However, we're now living in an era of big data as well. And Vance, you just talked about traffic into downtown feels a lot easier than it used to be. We used to put out, I don't know if people know this, but we used to put out tubes on the road, and as cars would drive over them, it would track, you know, how many vehicles. We're now in the era of big data where we have, you know, satellites will ping your phone at different sections of the road and it'll get information. And it's, again, we don't know who exactly, we just get an anonymous data number that kind of, we can code this. And we thought, great, we don't have to get, you know, just a little bit of data. We get 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We know how long it takes to get over a snowmageddon circumstance when, you know, it took us an hour and a half to get the freeway back up to moving speeds. And that's all great. We love that data, and this data helps us make better decisions. We didn't know what to do with it. We hired an IT person, never worked in transportation planning before, but we kind of met in the middle. And we said, we'll teach you transportation planning. You teach us how to get this data out of this, you know, black box somewhere and help us to do stuff with it. And it's really been a perfect marriage because we better understand data that we would never be able to understand before. And those skill sets that IT people have, we don't have the first, we don't know what we're doing. So we've really elevated the level of discourse and the level of information that we have. And hopefully we're making better decisions about how to use limited resources and limited transportation dollars because we're following what the data says.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. I don't want to cut anybody off. Michelle, were you saying something? I don't know if I cut you off. If I did, sorry. Were you sharing?
You did not. I just think that, you know, when we're ready, what a great segue to trends. But I'm going to defer to your facilitation, Tanisha. I was just could not agree more with everything that Vance and Carl said.
Yeah, before we get to trends, I do want to just do a poll. So I want to open it up to the group and start our poll number 2. All right. Wow, we got good turnout so far. Cheryl, looks like people are responding.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we're 61%, 63, climbing.
All right.
%. Give it a little bit. We're only at 48 seconds, so. Okay, looks like we plateaued at 84%. Are you good with closing?
Yep, I'm good with closing. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so our poll results look like with COVID-19, has it had an impact on your hiring landscape and how are you feeling about your PM career? Looks like 53%, which is good, are not too concerned because they do keep their certification current. 34% are concerned. They have certifications, but they're currently looking for PM opportunities. So hopefully what's been shared so far tonight for the folks that are falling into the 34% is encouraging to you. And then the 13% saying somewhat concerned, I don't hold any PM certifications. And we always have opportunities here at PMIWIC for different certification opportunities. So that's great. Thanks for that participation, everyone. All right, let's shift gears one more time. So we'll go to where Michelle was taking us to topics and trends. And let's talk about are there any new hot topics that PMs should pay attention to?
I don't know if I took this there. I think Carl and Vance took us there when they were talking about the convergence of IT and business. And there's a few that I want to share, but I want to go back and forth with Megan and everybody else. So the one I'm going to start with is the convergence of project management and change management. Independent of the size of an organization, change is happening rapidly. We all just lived it from March present. So change management is now falling into the hands of project managers and how they're going to lead that messaging, that adoption of whatever it is they're working in. So while having some technical, understanding is really important, change management is now something that is really an integral part of what project managers do. And so when you look at all the things that they're responsible for, now this, right? We're going to see organizations of all sizes change faster and faster and faster, right? So that change management piece that's where data management and data analytics, as Carl and Vance brought up, the impact of artificial intelligence and data analytics. How is it going to elevate the project manager's role with forecasting, scheduling, resource allocation? Does it effectively help their role, et cetera? And how are they going to manage all the data associated? But I wanted to pause there and see what other ones that Megan or Carl or Vance would like to share. I've got a couple more, but these are emerging trends 2021 and beyond, and then we can talk later about, so how do you prepare for that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Megan, you're kind of blurred out there. It looks like you are fading off into the ionosphere. I'll just jump in real quick. You're right. I think the change management and a lot of organizations that in the past have had robust organizational even development, OD departments and communications and change management departments. Over the last 10, 15 years, a lot of those have been reduced or have completely gone away. And so that it's a critical need for change management. It's the whole who moved my cheese thing, right? If you're not engaging with the people whose cheese you're moving, I can almost guarantee that you will not have a total success with any effort that you're engaged in. And then the differentiation with management and with executive leadership between project change management, right, and organizational change management. They don't necessarily get all the time the difference between the two, much less understand why you should have an entire section of your schedule and a whole bunch of resources engaged in just going out and talking to people and writing communications and having scheduled communications and doing stakeholder analysis and all of those things they see as busy work that's just slowing the project down. And so, as you were saying, it's really up to the project manager right up front to sell the need for it and then to continue to talk to leadership and their sponsors as to why it's necessary and important.
That's good. Megan, it looks like you faded back in so we can see you clearly. Did you have something to share?
Sorry about that. Technology stuff. It's either that or the mute button, but I don't know if you would call it, I don't really know how to categorize it, but I guess a trend that I'm seeing with the PMs, change management is such a good point. The intersection there is it's so important. A trend I'm seeing is just the ability, because a lot of projects that are happening right now, there's a lot of resistance with everything that's going on with businesses, resistance to adapt to technology, things like that. It's becoming more and more important. I'm noticing in interviews, more questions and things like that happening surrounding how are you going to navigate, for lack of better terms, kind of like the politics of different business units and things like that. So I don't know if it's an emerging trend or topic. I just think it's something I'm noticing is always important as a PM or in that world, but I think it's becoming more and more important to employers, because not only are you not having the ability to necessarily do that face-to-face, but now you're having to do that, navigate all these changes that's happening in the world, and you're having to do it virtually. So they're really looking for people that can speak to that, have clear examples of that, and can show that along with change management kind of experience too.
Yeah, absolutely. Carl, I don't want you to be left out.
Thank you. I don't know if I have a lot more to add, and I hate to even mention this because I think we've had such a nice discussion, and I think I've learned so much from you. I was going to bring up, we're a week away from the election, so I'm sorry. Hopefully this doesn't go too political, but I've noticed in society there's a lack of risk management understanding, and I have friends on both sides of the equation. I have a friend that hasn't left the house in 6 months. I have a friend that says, I'm going to just live my life how I used to, and I don't care. And I think that there's a lack of societal understanding about how we can understand risk, mitigate risk, approaches to productivity without putting ourselves in harm's way, but understanding all of life is a risk. And so I'm sorry, I hope I haven't derailed this too much. I'll try and get back on, but just kind of say add to what Megan was saying about communicating the benefits of project management. And I think that I've gone to interviews and said, well, I'm a project manager, and I thought that would sell it on its own. But really communicating, because I'm a project manager, I can really develop a scope of work that makes sure that we get the right things done and has the right deliverables, and know how to work with stakeholders, and really communicating, with those other skill sets, IT. What does that do for the company, especially for Compass? We don't hire a lot of IT, but I think government industries that don't hire a lot of IT will need IT project managers in this era of big data and communication and change and being nimble and on your feet. But being able to communicate those benefits of having a project manager is going to be key for those that have those skills to be able to communicate what it does for the company.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Vance.
Can I throw one more thing in?
Yeah.
It kind of dovetails off of this conversation, but one of the other valuable skills that PMs can expand on and bring to the table is the ability to engage in a project life cycle far earlier than typical, where they're actually working with the business sponsors to develop proposals, to develop, to make sure that the scoping and everything else is being done early enough. And the other side of that is that them the opportunity to raise issues like risk, project risk. What happens if we do this project? What happens if we don't do this project? And then to also make sure that things like change management and other ancillary support services are brought into it as early as possible. So that's another skill set, and that it takes a little salesmanship to be able to get your foot in the door and make sure that you get engaged early enough in the process.
Right.
Absolutely. Michelle, I saw your hand.
Thank you. I just wanted to round out, I reached out to our Experience Solutions practice group that has a lot of bright minds on project management, and they gave me the 6 emerging trends, which Megan, you captured beautifully. The emphasis on soft skills, absolutely critical. So they are greater reliance on digital and remote teams, period. Borderless talent is here. I don't want to say here to stay. I don't have that visual, but it's here to be a part and an option, right? An option, remote. A closer connection between projects, strategy, which includes risk management. So Carl, you were spot on. No buzzkill there. It's just, we have to be thinking about it. You have to understand the politics that Megan was talking about. You have to understand how to communicate, navigate that, like Vance was saying, but the closer connection between projects and strategy, which elevates the PM's role. Project management and change management, we discussed that. The emergence of hybrid project management approaches. I mean, some of us, that's like fingernails on a chalkboard. Oh, there will be no hybrid. It's coming. And some places it successfully is already here. Soft skills, is Megan pointed out with her other topics, and the impact of artificial intelligence, data analytics, etc., on the role. Those are the big ones, 2021 and beyond. And we can talk for a minute based on time on, so how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, right, to the group, and probably I'm sure that those attending tonight are wondering, right, what is the best thing that PMs can do to make themselves more marketable, right? How do we continue to adapt and evolve? And so we'd love some ideas from this group, some insight.
A lot of us are attracted to project management because we like things carefully organized, and we like check boxes, and we like to move through a project schedule and hit targets. And I think that one of the biggest challenges is getting managers and directors and executives to understand that that's really, really critical. If you want a project that completes on time and on budget and provides the benefits realization that you expected, this is how we're going to get to it. But at the same time, it also requires us to step away from that kind of box checking part of our personality and engage in the soft skills. I think for PMs, anything they can do to expand their ability to communicate with executives, to understand business strategy, to earn trust. I think one of the biggest things, I'll just give you a little quick anecdote. One of the things I do with my team is when a new team member comes on, they don't do anything for a month except shadow the leaders in the clinical areas. That's all they do. I say, don't look for things that need to be fixed. Just follow them around, ask questions, and see what they do and what a day in their life is. And that's really part of that, is to get familiar with that side of it. But the other part of it is to build trust, right, as a resource, because that's what we want, is we want them turning to us. So I think anything a PM can do today to build those soft skills, some of it obviously is technical, but a lot of it is just learning how to communicate with people at all levels and with all backgrounds across there. The other thing I would say is, if they have an opportunity to get exposed to any aspect of business analysis, that is a tremendous benefit. If you have a business analysis background or add-on to your project management skills, that's what allows you to get engaged in the project lifecycle earlier on.
Those are great. Those are great. And I'll just go round. Megan?
Yeah, I was going to say basically everything that Van said. I think it's just really important. The only thing I'll really add is finding new ways to reach out in this virtual environment and making sure you're really consistent. I know that's really vague way to put it, but finding new ways to reach people that maybe you couldn't before, whatever that might be. So I think that's really it, and being consistent. I know I struggle with it a little bit too, especially training and developing, a couple of recruiters right now that are a completely remote environment. It's reminding myself, I know they're there and I know those things, but finding ways that I can reach out and build that relationship and stuff more. So I think it's important in any industry, in any career, but especially as a PM, if you're navigating these changes with these soft skills becoming so much more important than in different ways. So.
Okay. Carl, what do you have? What some of the best things that PMs can do?
I would say there's a lot of niches that can be filled by PMs, and especially by IT PMs. And just quickly, we are required to do public outreach to make sure that we're building a transportation plan that actually serves the people that they meet. And for years, that meant hosting a meeting where we would show up, we'd bring a box of cookies, nobody would come, we would sit around for 2 hours, talk about how nobody would come, and then we would check the box off and say, well, we did our outreach, and nobody cares. And that's, from our perspective, that's not cutting it anymore. We really want to make sure that we're really spending money how people want us to spend it, and building a plan that serves the people that live in the valley. And so we came across software that was developed by somebody that understood the government need that we had and built some software for it. We kind of gamified this long-range transportation planning, which doesn't sound very interesting, but it really was. We had over 7,000 people participate in this survey, and really got a lot of feedback that we would never have gotten sitting in a room with a box of cookies staring at each other. And so this person found the niche, and I'm sure there's thousands of different niches. I'm not even sure what they are, but everything that we're trying to do is gamifying visualizations and providing really interesting, user-friendly ways to communicate to the public. And that seems right up an IT and a PM's alley for building software and tools and ways and processes to make that happen. So that's just my perspective. I'm sure there's others, but that's really what we're seeing right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. That's great. Michelle?
I'll quickly share two things. Number one, dig deep to improve blind spots. Go to your performance reviews, go to your leadership. When I saw those median numbers in tenure, I'm like, okay, we've worked a long time. We've got people we can ask that, well, better than telling you how good you are where you're not, right? And so in leadership, communication, problem solving, delegation, control issues with PMs, right? Enthusiasm, team building, integrity, and competence. And these may not be that you don't have them, but perception is reality. What does your brand look like out there? Just dig deep and improve. So that's not about getting another certification or getting a master's or a PhD in project management. It's about just improving a single area. Just shave one stroke off your golf game. And second, keep your PMP certs current. It's very individual, which one you should do. So Megan and I can help you with that. Carl and Vance can as well. I will tell you, it continues to be a pretty heavy requirement. Megan faces it, I face it. It will differentiate you. Keep them. It helps keep you marketable. Those are my two ads. Awesome,
thank you. And that will conclude kind of our questions, right? This panel discussion at this time. Want to just take a moment and thank all the panelists. We do have a question that we want to pose to the audience at large. And so we're going to open the chat at this time for the attendees. And we're going to place a question in there. And we ask that you would take some time and give us some responses. So Cheryl, are we ready to do that?
Yep, I just sent it out.
Hey, perfect. So really we want to know, right, as a professional organization, what can PMI Western Idaho chapter, what can we do to help support our members and make you more visible and make your skill sets more visible, right? What kind of support are you needing as PMs? That helps us to tailor sessions like this and future training opportunities that come in. And so we totally welcome your responses to that. Again, thank you so much to all the panel members, Vance, Megan, Carl, Michelle. Appreciate your time and just your sharing. I think that this definitely has been great. It's been really meaningful to me personally. So I think that this was great, and hopefully the attendees tonight find that this has been extremely useful to them as well. I'd also like to take a moment to just thank the volunteers for the programs team. So we do have volunteers, so they helped develop our questions and kind of refine them. And so a big thank you to them as well. And a huge thank you to Cheryl, as always, for all of her support. She makes all the technical stuff happen and so much more behind the scenes. And so can't extend enough thanks and appreciation to Michelle and to the entire board for all of their support through these events. I'm not sure if we actually have time for questions. Cheryl?
So I think we have the meeting scheduled from 6 to 7:45. So you're at 7:30 right now. You do have a couple of folks who submitted some questions, which actually could be pretty easy to address. I don't know if you noticed early on, there was a question from Michael and then one from Rod. We've got so many answers coming in. Let me
Okay,
scroll
let me
back up.
see. Oh, I do see question from Michael.
Right,
Okay,
right.
so I'll ask that one. Thank you. I did see that. Thank you. So remote PMing, this is the question from Michael, has inherent additional challenges. There are some negative impacts. His question is how are staffing needs and challenges being met, and what changes are anticipated?
You're right. I mean, and I think we touched on a few of them already, but I think the number one is making sure that, and this goes back to something Michelle said earlier, is making sure that the tools and the technology are there to make sure that that's as seamless as possible when they are running a meeting or trying to gather information or whatever it is, that you don't have those hiccups, because that's a stressor right there. The other thing is really looking at your teams and asking them, how comfortable are you with running meetings this way? How comfortable are you with managing projects remotely as much as possible? And then based on their answers, then trying to come alongside them and support them and try to figure out how you can help in those areas where there are negative, negative kind of consequences, unintended consequences. But it really goes back to what people mentioned earlier, which is, I've doubled my one-on-ones, for instance, and I'm just kind of constantly checking in with people. Just, even an email, hey, how's it going? Everything okay? Anything I can do? But really being about trying to find out what it is you can do for those PMs that will help them with making the transition.
That's good. That's good feedback. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question?
Very quickly on the staffing challenge part, reverse engineering. Where are you to budget timeline? Where are you to project timeline? Where are you to project budget? Where are you to burn rate? Those types of things. The health of the project is going to help with that staffing challenge. And earlier on, thinking, do we need more resources or less resources on this, and adjusting quickly. That's my only contribution.
Okay. And then one final question that we'll do tonight was submitted by Rod. Apart from PMP skills, do you see any demand for scheduling or PM software expertise such as Primavera or Procore, anything like that? Or are you guys noticing any trends in that arena?
That looks like a Megan thing to me.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, I think any software, especially now, any tool, any extra tool that you have experience with is going to be helpful right now. And to that note too, I've also noticed during all of this over the last 6 months, the PMs I have worked with who have been in their roles, they've noticed that, scheduling and things like that have become are maybe more of the part of the job than originally anticipated, because there's more to schedule, I guess, because it's all virtual environments. So more of these video conferences, we're spending more time, getting people all in the same virtual room or what have you, which is a little bit harder sometimes than getting, I guess, in the regular work environment. So I think we are seeing that a little bit more, but I guess to wrap it up, any software or anything like that that you can get exposure to is only going to help you moving forward. So.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. Thank you. And that will close us out for tonight. Cheryl, are there any last minute instructions? I know that we definitely want to remind everyone about the PDU instructions that are available. Any other instructions?
Yeah, we'll just make a note that they will receive a survey tomorrow. It's just a very quick survey, only 4 questions. We would really appreciate it if they could complete those and provide that information back to us. It helps us to determine if we're on topic and or if we're not, what we can be providing in the future if we haven't already considered that for other presentations. As well, the presentation recording, we're going to make that available via an email link as well, and that should show up again tomorrow.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you again to our panelists, and that'll do it for tonight. Have a great rest of your evening.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.